Is it your money mindset that's causing you to struggle to make more money? I wonder. Is it a belief that you're not worth it, you're not good enough? I wonder. There is so much buzz out there about money mindset because that's our greatest pain. It gets our attention, doesn't it, when there's not enough? This is Aryana Rollins, and you're listening to The Manifesting Guide. This is podcast 49. How to Uplevel Your Money Mindset. I'm so glad you're here. I've been in the field of money mindset for over 17 years, since 2005. I've studied it all, or at least it feels like that, especially when someone new pops in and they have an interesting perspective. I'll research it. Sometimes I take the program, and then I find it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz, and behind the curtain, there's no substance. The reason why I say that, because unless the person is highly skilled and highly trained in accessing the unconscious mind and its programs, those shifts aren't going to last. And I know this because people come to me not as a kind of last resort, but they have spent a lot of time and a lot of money to shift things. And they have bought into the promises of quick fixes. Now, with that said, changes can happen quickly when someone is right and ready for it. Let's get started. I'm really excited to bring this new content to you now. And I've got a new insight that came from my meditation this morning that I had not seen before. So some people could say, I'm really good at this mindset piece. And my goodness, the work that I teach and I use upon myself to clear through resistance and blocking negative thoughts and behaviors and emotions. Hey, the book title was How to Make Lots of Money for Anything Fast. So wouldn't I be queen of that? Queen of mindset? Well, not so much. Here's the thing, and I'll go back to the subject of this podcast in a moment, but let me just tell you about this book title. So it's written by Stuart Lichtman, and Joe Vitale came in to be his second editor, and Joe really was a master at words and a master at, master of ceremony of a circus. He was very good. So he strongly recommended Stuart Lichtman change the title to How to Get Lots of Money for Anything Fast. That's my understanding of perception. There's possible nuances to it, so don't quote me for sure on that one. And Stuart realized, that's where most people wake up, and that's where they suffer. And that his whole background and motivating force, his why, if we go to Simon Sinek, why and how why, the emotion behind the why, how powerful it is and motivating. His why is that in many years ago, I think it might have been late 70s, early 80s, he had an accident and he was clinically dead for 8 minutes. Well, something like that changes a person. Not all near-death experiences have spiritual awakenings, but some do. He did. He was someone who was working incredibly hard to amass a good amount, a good fortune, and he helped companies turn them around from failure. And when this event happened to him, he said he met what he sees and perceives as God. And his whole world shifted. His whole sense of meaning shifted when he came back into his body. He said from that moment on, he wanted to be with God. He wanted to be with what felt like God to him. So he found someone who taught meditation, and they also taught spiritual principles, and he learned from them. And he dedicated himself to meditating every single day for an extended period of time. It was in one of these meditations that, because his heart was so open and his purpose and his drive was so big to help humanity at this point, what came through him was a step-by-step system. Some can call it scientific. How to accomplish your intentions. How to manifest. So he came out of meditation and he wrote. He said he wrote and wrote for hours, and then he'd go back into meditation to get the next piece, and he'd come out and he'd write. And this happened, for hours and hours in a day. And what the result is, okay, get ready for this awkward title, name, cybernetic transposition. I'll give a definition to that. Cybernetic comes from the Greek term steersman. So if you have a steersman in a boat, they're navigating, they're charting where the boat is going. Transposition means you can transpose from one area to another. So cybernetic transposition, I just thought of this right now. It's interesting. I thought about it before. Is putting the right part of us in charge. So instead of the part that can be ego-driven for our why, because again, there's no issue with the desire to have money, make money, spend money, help others make money. No issue. But if the desire is coming from a lower self, or some might call, don't even like the term ego, because ego is a complex thing. I'll do another podcast just on ego. But say the lower self, lower desires, okay, to have the flashy things of life. Let's just say that. Well, then it's not going to be fulfilling when you get it. It will temporarily. There's always that adrenaline rush. This is so great, my brand new car. And then a month later, it's dirty and dusty, just like your other car was. But you still might have joy from it. But you know what I mean. It's the joy that just knocks your socks off and rocks you and you feel great. That's the kind of fulfillment. Putting the right part of us in charge. So cybernetic transposition, steersman, transposition. The definition of that is that you can take a success in any area of your life. So say you are really good at managing your family. You're really good at getting the children out to school in the morning. You're excellent at managing the family budget and making curious, unusual, inventive meals, and everybody enjoys it. So you're good at that home management. Well, say something happens and you're now in a position where you're divorced. You need to be the single income for your children. Well, maybe you could transpose that, take that success, and I know you can do it. I show people all day long how to do this. You take that success and you apply for an office manager job or an executive assistant job, for example, because in a way, aren't they running a home? Yeah. Okay, so back to this. So money mindset, again, it's a buzzword, and there may be aspects to what people are teaching out there, books you're reading. There may be an aspect of truth. There is in everything, right? But here's the thing. If you take that aspect of truth and you make it as this is the entire solution, that's where we can put blinders on. We don't see the limitation of whatever that offering is or whatever that person is writing about or the program. We don't see the limitations because we've bought into those early premises. So it's discernment. That's a whole other topic. We'll have another podcast on that. So mindset. Is it mindset? I wonder about that. I mean, it's such a common thing now. When I was first studying this 20 years, dare I say that? 20 years ago. Mindset wasn't such a big deal. But now we get these buzzwords and people grasp it and they know there's importance, but then it gets muddied. It gets tossed around and it loses its value and meaning. So I'm going to not even use that term anymore. Not. Okay. So let's talk about this. what I saw in meditation, because it's really valuable. At least it's valuable for me, and hopefully it will be valuable for you. Okay. Is I had an experience of, I would say, amassing money. Okay. I'm not going to how it happened, but I had access to a lot of resources. That's when I started my business. And my business was, first year, did pretty well for someone who's self-employed, $50,000 way back in 2005. That's not bad. And I was on track to make a significant income. The clients were getting amazing results. People were finding me. I wasn't doing any advertising or marketing. And then life change. Not to go into much detail there, but I entered into a relationship. And with relationships, we start to see ourselves through the other person. At least I did. And the other person, as amazing as he was, he had a view of me that was supreme. And then he had a view of my work that was not so supreme. And I remember the criticism. I remember the harsh words, how he would describe what I was doing. And I've come to understand what was underlying his view, because he was my teacher. He was my spiritual teacher for 10 years. And so he was the one who was to bring the learnings, the teachings to the relationship. And here I was doing something that, one, he didn't understand, two, was making good money, and he had been struggling with making money for a long, long time, ever since he was on a spiritual path. And three, it took time away from him and what we were meant to be doing. So that's enough to get anybody upset, right? So, of course, when you're open to a feedback loop like a partner or a boss or a child, it impacts you. It's really hard for it not to, because we're just human. We're open to how other people see us. We want to be loved. We want to be liked. That was way before I realized the importance of having an internal feedback loop, which is essential. I mean, we take that mindset piece and we can put all sorts of nice bells and whistles, money mindset around it, balloons and bows. But if we're not aligned with who we are, if we don't have that internal feedback loop and our higher self, true self feedback loop, we can do all sorts of fabulous programs and hire coaches and read books and discipline ourselves. And it's not going to change, because as soon as we relate to someone, we get on Facebook and someone else is knocking out of the park and they're really successful in the field we're in, and we're not feeling we're doing enough, we're not successful enough. Well, instantly, our feedback loop has now become established through that Facebook post or that Facebook success person. And it's no longer our internal feedback loop. That's everything. Okay. So where am I going with this? It's identity, my friends. It's identity. So let's go back to that relationship briefly. It was 2012, and I had to prepare for a really important appointment, kind of appointment you don't want to prepare for. An IRS audit. There was a question on a trip that I had taken to Egypt. And yes, it was tax deductible because it was for a company that I was working with, their products. And the person was arranged to research and took us with him about essential oils. So yes, it was write-offable, but it was a huge amount of money, so it flagged things. Okay. So I had a meltdown. Even though I've got a bachelor's degree in accounting, I had to prepare. So my partner at the time came in like a hero. I was so grateful. Oh my gosh, genius man, really helped me. But in that helping me, he got into the nitty-gritty of my finances. And let's just say I was not a good steward of my resources back then. I had this view that money would just come. And generally speaking, it had most of my life, but not since the relationship. My internal feedback loop had been dismantled, and now he was my feedback loop. So what do you think happened to my business? It was huge. Huge. I remember going, I don't remember what year it was, but I remember one year it was $15,000. And this is me with many years experience at my work. I was getting better at it. But I had dismantled my internal feedback loop, and now he was defining who I was. So he helped me out with the audit. And in it, he found how I had been spending money. And he had a way to wake someone up, so to speak. Very shocking, very strong, very intense. I was not a good steward of resources. I didn't know how to spend money. I didn't know how to make money. It devastated me. That was kind of the last bit of undermining who I was in his eyes. So, what happened? Well, thankfully, he woke me up, and I became aware that I had not been stewarding my money and resources and investing my time in the right activities, spending my money on things that were bright, shiny objects, so to speak. That started me on a path of being conscious of my money. It did not fix it right away, let me tell you. It took a few years. Sometimes when patterns are ingrained, it takes a while to unravel them. And one could say because we haven't hit rock bottom. We haven't learned the lessons. We haven't got the wisdom out of it. When I say learn the lessons, it's not like from meanness. There's some higher power out there trying to kind of slap us into shape. He used to do that, but when there's a benevolent force, God, or if you would like to say, there's so many terms. Let's just leave it there. They're not trying to whip us into shape and hurt us and give us a lesson. No. We create those experiences. We create our tests. We are our teacher. Life just seems to be the theater. It's the movie. And so in meditation this morning, I realized I never updated my self-image. I had been carrying that around for all those years in the relationship I was with him. And in 2012, that shocking event where he woke me up and was harsh about it. Let's just say that in a kind word. I had been holding that as my self-image and view. So of course, when you've got that self-image and that view, life circumstances will equate that. You will continue to make choices that confirm that. But here I was shown in this meditation, I wasn't even doing that. I wasn't making choices that confirm that self-image. Not a good steward of resources. Not at all. But that had a life of its own. And that's what can happen when you have shocking events. These moments in time get etched in our unconscious mind. And we don't see the etching anymore. That's who we are. Even if our life circumstances change, even if we are making the money, even if we are making good choices with money, we're saving money. Our business is succeeding and growing and income is expanding. That etching in the unconscious, when it's a shocking event like that, that becomes how we see ourselves. It becomes our identity, which goes way beyond, my friends, the notion of beliefs. Way beyond. Identity is everything. It's everything. How we see ourselves. So updating our identity changes our life circumstances and changes everything about us. And I'm not saying put an ego identity in place, but an identity that's based on truth. And the only way I know how to do that is by true self-alignment. True self-alignment. That's the only way I know how to do it, because it's based on truth. It's based on who we really are, and not just who we came into this world born as. No, because we learn, we grow, we evolve. The true self is ever evolving. So it's not just know yourself and then, oh good, I know who I am. I've studied my astrology chart. I understand my human design. No, it's not like that at all. Those are, let's say, markers that you have, qualities, characteristics, tendencies. That's not who you are. Those are indications. And sometimes if we have that, instead of internal feedback loop with our true self, we have an external feedback loop, we make that who we are. And that becomes an identity which we are now defending, and we're believing in more than the truth, that we are an evolving consciousness. We're not fixed. We're evolving. At least I hope we are. Okay. So, identity. I updated my identity. Wow. I had no idea I was still carrying that. And I've done so much, what we call in my work, blocker resolution, around this area of money, resources. I've beaten myself up. My friends, you can't even imagine. I can be pretty good at that for many, many years. What does that do? It keeps confirming the identity, because it's true. I wouldn't be beating myself up on something that wasn't true, would I? Huge. So as we have a shift in consciousness, it's not enough to just oh, now I see it, everything's good. No, we have to make changes in the physical world. So after this podcast, I'm going to do one of my favorite things to do, is I'm going to do an inner dialogue with my true self, my inner success team that guides me in material success and the business world. And I'm going to uncover what blockers remain that are inhibiting me from seeing my new sense of being in the world, my new identity. Because that person who I was in 2012, 10 years ago, is no longer valid. I've learned, I've grown. Isn't that the purpose of being on the earth, is learning, growing? We're not fixed, we're not static. Hey, if you'd like to understand what your unconscious financial set point is and start to crack the code to making more money, get your free gift at highertrueself.com/freebies. And if you've liked the episode, please subscribe. Thanks for listening.